Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
The record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning and welcome to For the Record. Today is Wednesday, the 7th day of February, 2018. I want to thank you, our listening and viewing audience, for allowing Radio Cayman and by extension For the Record into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. Of course, For the Record is a show produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I am your host, Orit Connor, and you're welcome to join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. During those days, our phone lines are always open. There is always someone there waiting to take your calls. And as I usually say, it is normally that beautiful radio voice of Miss Susan Watson. You can call us on our toll-free number provided courtesy of Flo. That toll-free number is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. Of course, if you don't like to talk on the telephone, then email us at For the Record. That is one word, For the Record, at candw.ky. In addition to that, we also have another feature. We have a WhatsApp number. That WhatsApp number is 925-3261. We encourage you to send us a text or leave us a voice note. But do not expect us to answer that number. We will not answer that number. So you're expected to send a text or leave a voice note. If you send us a text, we will read its contents over the air. If you send us a voice note, then your voice note will be played over the air as well. So I trust that those instructions are coming through loud and clear and that you will follow those instructions. This way, it makes it much easier for you to communicate with us and also to communicate with our listening and our viewing audience out there. Without any further ado, this Wednesday has been set aside for the independent member of our Legislative Assembly. So it is my pleasure to have in the studio with me this morning none other than Mr. Kenneth Bryan. Mr. Bryan, good morning, sir. Welcome back to For the Record.
Good morning, OC, and good morning to the listening audience and potentially the viewing audience as this show is produced and replayed on TV. I want to say a pleasant good morning to Miss Susan, who's in the background but so instrumental in everything that happens here at Radio Cayman. It's a pleasure to be here, even though the circumstances are a tad bit different today in this show. But it's always a pleasure to speak to the people of the Cayman Islands.
Certainly, and it's a pleasure, to have you on as well. I want to give you, since it is your day, give you an opportunity to preface some of the things that you want to talk about today as well.
Well, I've listed 7 things that I would hopefully like to get into, depending on the conversation. Some may not make it because, as we start, people get interested in the topics and the topics move on. Mm-hmm. But particularly to talk about the Georgetown Primary Sports Day, which is coming up tomorrow and Friday. I also would like to discuss where things are at with the Honorable Steve Macfield. Dr. Steve Macfield, I call him honorable because I think he's deserving of that, and Miss Teresa Pitcairn in respect to the position on the show.
No, well, that one we won't talk about.
Okay, well, that puts me in an awkward position in respect to your decision not to talk about it, but
Well, I think we've put it at, to rest at this point in time, and
Well, like
on air we would want to basically keep it that way. We just want the show to continue. There are issues, there are things that I personally still want to resolve, and I really don't want to throw any more fuel on the fire at this point in time, and I don't think that management wants me to either.
Well, I and you have every right not to speak about that. But I have every right to discuss what I believe is important, because you see, it's bigger than what I would say in respect to the specifics of Mr. McField and the specifics to Ms. Pitcairn. What we have here, and me coming from a media background, is a severe concern in respect to how media is controlled or engineered or managed. And it's something that has to be focused on simply on the basis of the importance of information to public. And whenever there seems to be a negative control over that, there should be reason for concern. This is not to do with particularly you or the two members that I just mentioned. But
we can talk about press freedoms or freedom of speech in general.
Yes.
In general, without getting into any specific
individuals.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, that I am comfortable to make that compromise there too. But I just think that it's important we discuss about that point, right? The next thing is for opposition members to have access to legal drafters. We currently don't, and that's an important point. I'll say why as we go on in the show. Also, I have intentions to have a Palmdale community meeting. It was scheduled for the 14th, but unfortunately, not realizing the date, it was Ash Wednesday, as well as Valentine's Day when we made it. And for those who are listening, who are aware that we were planning to have that community meeting, we have now put it off till the 21st, which is the following Wednesday. So it's not next Wednesday, but the Wednesday after that. Anyway, I'll go into it a little bit further on later on. I would also be speaking about I planned a meeting this weekend with the Kodak and the Georgetown Central Community Committee to discuss some projects we're planning to do this year in Georgetown Central. Let me specify, not particularly only Georgetown Central. I was so happy that a person shaked me into shape in respect to saying, Kenneth, remember before this whole politics thing, it was Georgetown, Georgetowner. So some projects I plan to do in Georgetown, period, regardless if it falls outside of my constituency lines, right? Also, I have some concerns about Georgetown Primary School. I've met with them, toured the school, and met with some of the teachers and parents, and there's some things that I would like to discuss and get feedback from the public on. There's also one matter that I'm dealing with right now in respect to a foreclosure, which has now highlighted yet again the limitations of the pension law in respect to persons having accessibility to their pension. So those 7 things I want to talk about. And whenever you're ready, I'm ready to start off.
Well, we still have about 5 minutes before we go to a commercial break, so let's get the show on the road.
All right. So for those of you who are from the Georgetown area and have kids or grandkids, and your kids go to Georgetown Primary, or you went to Georgetown Primary School yourself?
Oh, yes, I did. As a matter of fact, Georgetown Primary School was the product of women, because the men were mainly at sea, women in Georgetown demanding that we get a school and that we be removed from the waterfront
because of the wave action.
After a near drowning, out there. And the women of Georgetown, just like how the women in 1957, 1958 sought the right and advocated vigorously for the right to vote, they did that as well, and they eventually got Georgetown Primary.
Well, we know the good thing is that Cayman has a very strong history of strong women, and I'm so proud to say that I'm a Caymanian, and that there's so many strong women here, and there's still a lot of them. They don't get as much credit as they do, but I'm glad to know that they took the charge when it was necessary, particularly as our men were away. Anyway, that being said, there is the sports day this Friday, the main event. Going to be at Truman Borden. So if you are a past student and you still have interest in how your school is doing and you remember those sports days, take some time off. Come down to the Truman Borden on Friday. It's going to be an amazing event. I'm going to be there, and I'm excited because that's the school I went to as well.
Who's the
New principal?
Because I know Miss Martin, was there, and she was loved and revered by everyone.
She's gonna kill me because I just had a meeting with them last night. But
sorry, I didn't mean to put you in the spot.
It's okay. She'll forgive me because this was only my second meeting with her. But I met with her and the teachers last evening. But she's a lovely lady with a strong Christian background, from Jamaica, with a good discipline structure and faith structure, and seems to be having a really good atmosphere amongst the workers there. And amongst the kids. So though it slipped me her full name now, and I probably get a text with the full name a little bit later on so I can tell the public, but really an amazing person. Again, so this Friday, Georgetown Primary School Sports Day. So if you ever want to take a little time off or your lunch break to come down to the Truman Borden, I know the kids there would appreciate as much persons in the attendance to give support. And since I'll take this opportunity to talk about some sports, one thing I realized over the last couple of weeks, OC, is that, when you were running for election and the possibilities of being minister or not, or counselor, or what have you, I think I come to the realization that if God sees it fit in the future and I was successful and there was an opportunity for me to choose what portfolio I would like to be in charge of, and I am now convinced in my heart, because of their interaction with the kids and what I know sports can do for this country by a way of unification, that sports would be the thing. I'm full with joy when I go to these sporting events. It's like I don't want to leave. Some politicians say,
would you want something like a combination of youth and sports?
Yes, because collectively they will do the impact that I want. I truly believe that sport and youth events are the thing that we can use to unify the country and give support and affect kids, because the kids' mentality is what's going to take the future forward. So if you have access to empowering that mindset and affecting that generation, you may not see the result immediately, and sometimes you do, because it becomes infectious when the kids are happy and spread that love and joy to their parents. And I give you an example. I went to school and I was talking to the kids, and I like to goof off with the kids to make them feel happy. It's not like some serious guy coming to talk, right? And a parent stopped to me and she said, "Kenneth, I don't know what you did to my child, but boy, they love you." And then I can see the joy in the child and the parent's face, because obviously I've made their child happy in some form. So I mightn't have been there directly, but I've affected the parent in some joyful way, and that is important to me. So I just saying that I think that youth and sports would be something that I'm very, very interested in, even though unlike the members of, let's say, Mr. Bernie Bush, who has a sporting background, and ideally they would be a person that would be good for sports because he comes from a sporting history and experience, and have more experience to lead that ministry and the knows and works. I still think that once you have a love and a passion for something, you can do very well. Anyway, that being said,
if I may for a second, too, since you're on the subject of sports, someone forwarded me a copy of on a WhatsApp. As a matter of fact, I was in the post office on Monday, and I bumped into an individual who expressed their concerns about what was happening with the coach who had been found guilty, and a recommendation for deportation had been made. And then it is so and the person said, I'm curious to know what's happening. I don't know what the decision has been made by government in relation to that person remaining in the Cayman Islands. And I said, I'll try to see what I can find out about it. And then bang, today in the newspaper, it shows up, about it. And that person was expressing their concern at some point in time. Maybe, I'm not sure if I'll have time to do it on this show today, hopefully on Friday, to talk about the options that the government had in relation to what decisions to be made in terms of allowing the person to remain in the Cayman Islands, talk about the law, the fact that any person who's sentenced to a term of imprisonment of more than 12 months or more, automatically, by operation of law, are deemed to be a prohibited immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
So look at the mechanisms by which the governor in cabinet, and I say the governor in cabinet, but it's really cabinet decision, what mechanisms under the law that they were able to use to allow the person to remain in the Cayman Islands.
I think they need to give reasons to the public as well, because sadly, if we have to go to a break, because I'm going to have to explain what my position is.
Okay, we'll take the break, and then we have one caller as well. Folks, please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning, and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, none other than Mr. Kenneth Bryan, MLA, who represents the constituency of Georgetown Central in our Legislative Assembly. Do we have that caller now, Ms. Susan? We've lost that caller. I'm sure we will encourage that caller to call back whenever the opportunity arises. Mr. Bryan.
Yes, thank you, OC. As I was saying before the break, the circumstances of Cabinet's decision not to follow the normal protocol or the normal decision-making process in respect to the law about deporting this particular individual who was a track coach. I have a viewpoint on it, but I must admit my bias in this matter, because I know the partner of this coach. It's somebody I respect tremendously, somebody I went to school with, and I love dearly. So it's really difficult for me to say what I would normally say if I wasn't connected to it. And I would never want that person to lose their loved one. So I have the emotional connection from that standpoint. But I must admit that as a representative, I see some concerns that's going to pop up automatically as a result. The question is, on what basis did they make this decision? There's policy and law already governing what to do, as you just outlined before we went to the show. That is
one of the options,
Yeah. So, and the first thing that comes to mind is, does this set a precedent? Is this going to be expected on the basis by others to say, okay, then I'm going to apply for cabinet to consider not deporting me as well? Is it so we have to find out why they chose not to. Is it because the person is married to a Caymanian? Because there's going to be a high likability that a person may say, well, I'm just going to get married to a Caymanian. There's some concerns that are going to come up now, unless we have considered those and say, okay, then we're still going to have the right and the ability to deny, and that if cabinet denies the next one for other reasons, that there's no appeal process and there doesn't seem to be some sort of unfair scenario.
Well, every case really is determined on its own merits, and no two cases are necessarily identical. It seems as if, we see in one of our local newspapers that the chief officer in the portfolio, Mr. Wesley Howell, has spoken to them and given some reasons why, and it is not necessarily a fait accompli at this point in time. It is not necessarily a final decision that has been made by cabinet, and like I said, we'll talk more about it. It appears as if cabinet has issued something called an entry permit that allows, and there's a particular section of our immigration law, which is actually section 63 of the immigration law, where cabinet may issue an entry permit for allowing a person to enter into and remain in the Cayman Islands with certain conditions. So it would be interesting to know
why,
what those conditions are. We have not seen in the court documents whether or not there is any contrition, any on the part of the individual, because the individual was found guilty of an offense, whether or not that person now, is apologetic, whether or not there is anything in terms of seeking counseling. That person is seeking, counseling as well. And if I'm correct, I stand to be corrected, but I believe that we had to go through some sort of an extradition process to get that individual back to the Cayman Islands, which means that they were resisting returning to the Cayman Islands as well. So, there are lots of things to look at.
Yeah, there definitely is. I just can see it from other circumstances, because I remember when I was a political assistant to the now premier, I know of Caymanians who born here, and say for instance their siblings weren't technically born here, and they found themselves in a crime of some sort, and then there was decisions to deport that individual who has, in my viewpoint, more of a closer connection to the Cayman Islands, and they've never been able to come back. And how do they feel in this circumstance? So I have to look at all the variables together, because they may feel slighted now. They haven't seen their brother or sister for decades, and I know that they've made applications to try to reverse that or make considerations for them to come back, and have been unsuccessful. But in this circumstance, Cabinet has made, at least so far, a special provision to not allow this person to be deported. So, but then again, I know the individuals involved, so I sympathize with them, but I have to look at all elements of it, right? So anyway, but I want to move on to the next point. So my next topic outside of Josh Allen Sports Day was the whole, not Steve McPhail and Teresa Pitcairn, but the freedom of speech element and press, and what they should be allowed to do and when there shouldn't be interference. I guess trying not to talk about the particulars of what happened here, I should just highlight what I was taught when I was a journalist in respect to the importance of those freedoms. We all know that once those freedoms are starting to be taken away, it's a slippery slope to other types of jurisdictions that we're not too keen on as a people. If people are not free to say how they feel without fear of this discrimination or are being maliciously taken advantage of by way of work or any other way, then people won't say how they feel and tell their positions. And if people are not voicing their opinions, then we don't truly know how the people feel. And then politicians get comfortable with being able to take advantage of the fear of voicing that opinion. I think from what I understand, it seems that a bit of fear is now out there, that potentially the government is taking a step, and I'm trying so hard to explain this without bringing up the current topic. But the meat of the story in this situation is that, is there government influence and stopping public, and not anyone specific, from voicing their opinion and their viewpoint? And should government have any influence over that? That's the question. I think that it's important that the government actually comes out with a statement on this position. I know that this department, this station, is trying to not make the situation get any worse. But unfortunately, the severity of the situation, there's no way around that. The breach or the perceived breach on freedom of speech is too severe for us to say, oh, we don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm sorry. It's just that's too late. The only reason so far you haven't seen an email directly from me to the head of this radio station, as well as to the minister who this radio station falls under, and to the deputy governor directly, is because I know other persons have made requests. And rather than duplicating it, I'm waiting to see what that person gets in response. But this is not something that can go under the rug, because the allegations of influence on the public radio, which is made by the public purse, is just too severe, and the government has to respond to those claims, whether they are factual or not, and what was the reasoning behind it, because it's
reasoning behind what?
Behind the perceived stoppage of persons.
And I'm glad you used that word perceived, because the government, like I said, I really don't want to get into this, but it was pointed out that the two individuals, there was nothing that prevented them from being on Fridays, being on today. They made the decision that they're not going to be
we know
on,
about the Friday and Wednesday.
Just like you are here today, and it is your right to determine if you wanted to bring someone on with you to do that. The government, those persons on the government side, are made to understand, made decisions that when they were on the show, they just wanted me to be the host at that point in time. So there's nothing that prevents the individuals from coming on otherwise.
Okay.
There's nothing that prevents them from calling in and talking on the show or anything like that. So there's no muzzling or anything like that in relation to that. But we have to go to our headline news now. When we come back, and we'll talk a little bit more about this off air as well. And I think that'll be helpful to you also. Folks, please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back immediately after the 8 o'clock news. Back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, MLA Mr. Kenneth Bryan, who represents the constituency of Georgetown Central in our Legislative Assembly. Before I throw the mic back over to Mr. Bryan, we have some comments from some of our listeners. I'm reminded that Savannah Primary School Sports Day is today at the Truman Borden Sports Complex as well. So if you like kids, Mr. Bryan, you may want to go to Savannah as well, even though that is not part of your constituency. And they also comment that any time a spouse and children are involved in issues of deportation, that the issue of human rights comes into it. The right to family life. And then the person goes on to talk about similar cases where a person was married to a Caymanian, committed a serious offense, and were allowed to stay here on the basis of an entry permit. The cabinet decided not to deport that individual, and that individual now is accused again of serious crime as well. So they wanted to bring that to our attention. Now, I mentioned, if I may take a little bit more of your time, Mr. Bryan, I mentioned Section 63 of our immigration law. And Section 63 of the law reads, notwithstanding anything contained in this part, the cabinet, and this is the cabinet collectively, right, may issue a permit for the landing of any person in the islands, and such person shall be admitted accordingly upon such terms as may be specified by the said permit. So I spoke about that entry permit. Now, there's an operative word in here that says, which is land. It says that the cabinet may issue a permit for the landing of any person. Now, I've gone to the immigration law and in the definition section of immigration law, because you would figure when they use the word land, that means that you're going to allow them to come into the islands to actually land to stay
arrive
here, right? Arrive on the island, right? When you look at the definition section of the immigration law, the word land, it says land means to go to be, to remain, or to reside in any place in the islands other than on board a vessel or a place under the control of an immigration officer for his official capacity. So land means to go to, like we spoke about earlier, that's the normal meaning of the word. But to go to be, to remain, or to reside in. So it appears as if that individual, based on the entry permit, we don't know what the conditions on that entry permit is. I've seen entry permits that will have a condition on it that if the person is convicted in the future of a similar crime or any other crime possibly, that entry permit becomes null and void and then subjects that person to deportation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm going to stay away from that one because from the legal perspectives, and yes, there's personal perspectives there for me as well. I just, sometimes no government can get it perfect. They try to balance it as much as possible.
Yeah, and if I may very quickly just read one more. It says, good morning, OC. I have major concerns about the topic being discussed regarding deportation of a sex offender. We see more and more such incidents happening in our islands. We can condone we cannot condone them no matter who they're married to. He absconded and then fought extradition. Why in God's name he wants to stay here? He needs to go.
Well, so obviously we have varying
Varying
positions.
positions
and again, I think this is vital for cabinet to give its reasons. You can't just make decisions without the public understanding the purpose behind it. Too often things are decided on and the public don't know why. I think it's important that the cabinet explain their position in respect to that, so the country and any other persons who may be affected by similar situations like this can also understand what is available to them. So I'll leave that there.
Sure.
Let's move on to the next topic in respect to accessibility to legal drafters. As members of the opposition, we're expected to try to do our part in respect to changing things in the country, making proposals to the House. And speaking about Mr. Markfield, he made a comment on another radio show yesterday that he's noticed over the last 2 decades or last decade and odd that persons in opposition rarely bring bills to the House. And we know that bills is draft legislation and motions or suggestions to the government to consider an issue.
Yeah, because he's always talk about private members' bills as opposed to private members' motion.
Exactly.
There's a legal difference between the two.
Exactly. So one is asking the government to do something, and if they agree to it, and and the motion has a consistency of legal changes, then they will go off and get it drafted themselves through the legal drafting team by the Attorney General's office. So most cases you would see opposition member brings motions, but they don't bring bills. And it's important that we understand why that normally doesn't happen. Drafting a bill takes a certain skill set. And it's not something that your average person, even if you're an accountant or a good business person, there's probably about only 2 people. Actually, I don't even think there's anybody in Parliament who has experience in legal drafting. Even as a lawyer,
yes,
you don't necessarily have to have the experience of legal drafting. So it's a special skill set. So it's not expected that legislators to have the skill set of legal drafting. But we know that the government has their access to their own team in the government to bring draft legislation. And when you bring draft legislation, it's obviously with the hope that this change will make the lives of the people better. Mm-hmm. So the position of why the members of opposition haven't brought many bills is truly because we don't have access to drafters to help assist us. Because the foundation of an issue, let's say for instance, you say the pension law is incorrect. We want to change the pension law to allow Caymanians to use the pension to pay for their homes and no limitations of the $35,000. Now, you may think to yourself as an average person, just change the number of the 35,000 to unlimited amount. But legal drafters have the skill set that you can change just one word in the law, and it can be interpreted to so many variable different things.
And this could have an effect,
a ripple down effect in so many other ways. So legal drafters, their expertise is to understand every change in its slightest form and what can potentially be interpreted of that. So it's important to have drafters involved in any presentation of any draft bill. We don't have access to that, so very seldom you'll see that. So the question now comes up is...
if I may for a second, has anyone challenged whether or not legislative drafting, the government's legislative drafting department, has anyone other than government approached them and said, I'd like you to assist, and gotten a response to say, well, I'm sorry, we're only here for government's drafting? Not has anyone looked into the possibility as to whether or not legal drafting can assist those members of the Legislative Assembly other than the government?
Well, in all honesty, I haven't, but we've had discussions with others who have had indications that, they'll be willing to help.
Okay.
All right. Now, so I'm not going to say here on the show that they have refused to help opposition members, but there's concerns about the conflict of interest in respect to it, as well as who do you put the priority on in respect to the drafting team? Obviously, the government has their priorities, and drafting takes time. So, in the order of importance, when you're doing your drafting team is dealing with 7 or 8 bills, and one bill can take up a lot of time and research and understanding the way you word it and the like. So the conflict comes in is, one, are they going to make opposition drafting legislation a priority, or are they going to make the government a priority? And naturally, one would assume that they're going to be focused on the government. The government is who is in charge of the leaders of the day. So there's that conflict. And then there's the other conflict that persons are not confident in that department to be, I'll say what I heard yesterday on another show, that they're concerned of siding. I think that the opposition should have the right to have a choosing of that they don't have the conflict of working for the government as well. Because a drafter has the ability to affect the legislation in the slightest little form that we may not recognize, and to have somebody that we have access to on a regular basis, that we feel that there's no conflict there, I think is an important matter.
Well, when my experience, the limited experience that I have had with the legislative drafting is they want to get an insight of what it is that you're trying to achieve, right? So they're not going to tell you you should achieve this or what you should achieve. They want to know what it is that you want to achieve, and they will then look for the best way to craft that into legal language to ensure that it can withstand any scrutiny, as well as to ensure that it is not in any conflict with any other law,
laws, exactly.
And to ensure that it is in compliance with standard legal drafting procedures.
And again, that highlights how severe the issue is. And I just don't see us having the access to that. I think that it's time for and I'm going to put this to the deputy governor, because I'm not going to put it to the premier. You know what I mean? I don't think that we have to recognize there is politics here, rightfully or wrongfully. I'm not sure that it's something that the government will want to strengthen the opposition with. And I'm in the process now of speaking to other legal minds in respect to either, one, bringing a draft bill, even if it has to be paid for, because the problem that comes up is the money element. I give you an example. When the when the law school wanted to make the draft legislation for the legal practitioners bill. They actually went to a firm and they paid some $50-something thousand for the drafting of one bill. Now, that gives you the extent of the cost associated with drafting. Hence the reason you don't see as much bills coming to the House from the opposition. We don't have the disposal of the whole department to pay for something like that. And there's numbers of bills that I would like to bring. A lot of the laws that I think should be changed. Do I have the funding to go and find the drafter to say, listen, I need to pay you? I mean, obviously the extent of that bill was more severe than some of the things that I would like to do, but it would probably cost me about $10,000 per bill just to get that done, as opposed to how government has the whole legal team. But I know we have a caller.
Okay. No, we're going to a commercial break now, folks. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, none other than Mr. Kenneth Bryan, MLA, who represents the constituency of Georgetown Central in our Legislative Assembly. Turning the mic back over to Mr. Bryan.
All right. Thank you again, OC. And just following up in respect to before we went to the break, just to sum it up, I think it's time now for our governing structure to consider fair and balanced opportunity for opposition members to have access to legal drafters in order to best represent our constituencies. There's a number of laws that I would like to have drafts changes or potentially brand new laws that I think can help the people of the Cayman Islands. But the expense and the expertise is not available, or the funding for the expense and the expertise is not available to us. So in the coming weeks, and hopefully the response on the position doesn't take more than a month, I'll be returning back to tell you what the government, and when I say government, not particularly the government that's in power, but the Deputy Governor's office, the Speaker of the House, as well as the Premier, because collectively it's not the government's decision alone. It's the governing body members, and the governing body members make up of the Deputy Governor, Speaker of the House, who's in charge of the legislative proceedings, and obviously the government who has access to the public purse because they have the numbers. So hopefully I'll have a position on that, in that they'll come to the conclusion that it's only fair that members of the opposition have access to a legal drafting team that is independent of the current one that they use, and that there seems to be no conflict. So hopefully I'll have an update on that. I'm going to move on now to the topic of community meeting that I'm intending to have on the 21st of February in the Palmdale community. I've had a number of persons from the Palmdale area, and for those who may not know, Palmdale is in the Georgetown Central community constituency, and I want to thank the members in that area who supported me. But they've made some expressions to me about their concerns in the community, and would like to create a community group and a community watch group. They don't currently have one now, and there's some actions that have been asked of me to address. And before I address it just on one person or the other person's, one or two people's position, the intention is to have a public meeting in Palmdale on the 21st, which is a Wednesday, at 7 p.m. to get all members to come out and ask their opinions on a few issues that have been brought to my attention. Is it something that the majority would like to see in Palmdale, as well as the opportunity to formulate a group in the Palmdale area who can gather together on a regular basis to discuss issues that are bothering them and then bring them to my attention so I can address them. As well as, it's always good to have in any one neighborhood to have a group that looks out for little issues and that can make representation to those who represent them. So I'm looking forward to that, because Palmdale is a really, really amazing neighborhood. If I had the money, I'd buy a piece of property in there. They're really cool people in Palmdale. So I'm really happy about this meeting, and I hope that a number of them are going to come out. My little marketing team is currently drafting up the flyers now, so I'm expecting hopefully by this weekend or on the holiday Wednesday, while I know everybody's probably going to be home, is send those flyers out and remind them of it. So I hope to get something out of that.
And there are things that are happening in that area as well. Road improvements, road widening. Where
that they need to be
like
updated
bus
on
stops and stuff, because that's one of the stops that the school buses make in the mornings and the evenings, dropping off school kids and stuff like that. What's happening with the widening of the road there? Is there an intention to widen Crew Road all the way down to
they have a right to know that
Jose's
information.
gas station and stuff like that? What's happening?
Well,
I'm
OC
sure
is so
people
important.
have concerns about those things.
Yeah, it's so important you brought that up, because my intention was actually to have a Georgetown Central bigger meeting where it's not only exclusive to Palmdale, but all of Georgetown Central, whereby we get updates on relative things that affect them. So, say for instance, any road improvements, is there any future planned developments in the area? What's happening with the airport? Is there going to be an extension? Because you know that all of Crew Road, anybody who's on that side of the road, are affected, matter of fact, the whole Crew Road period, are affected by any major changes to the airport. Now, we know that the structure and the building, the airport facility itself, is being considered, but at one stage, there were considerations to altering the airport. And any increase in capacity and fluidity of airports, of planes coming in, I think it's appropriate that persons who are affected by it are aware of that. So my intention is to try to get as much updates. What is the police protocol or schedule for neighborhood passing? Like this relative information that people from my constituency would like to know.
Neighborhood policing.
Yeah. So get the persons from the NRA, a representative from there, get a representative from the police department to all come and speak on that night. So, but that one is a bigger meeting. I don't want to do that one until I get back from the UK. But we have a call.
We have a caller. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, OC, and good morning, Mr. Brian.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
And it's so good to hear you on the radio. OC, I really miss Teresa and Dr. Macfield.
I do. I miss them too. I do.
Okay. I hopefully soon that we'll hear them back on the radio.
I'm hoping. I'm hopeful as well with that. I'm hopeful.
Mr. Brian or Mr. OC, there's a matter that is going on now, and I've had many of the elder people here in West Bay ask me the question, but I cannot answer the question because I don't know about it. I'm only hearing bits and pieces. It is something about their money that they're getting from the government. Whether the government want to or social services want them to bring in their IDs, their passports, their birth certificates, or whatever else that they would have. They're confused about, like I said, it's mostly the elderly people. They're confused about this 2015, whether it's people that was getting it before 2015 or after 2015. Does either you know anything about it or understand? It was in the papers, but at the time I was up at Health City.
There was a release, a government press release. I'm trying to see if I can find it. If I don't have it in my email still, I will try to get it, caller, and read that information over the air again so that people will be familiar with what is being required. I'll try to find it definitely, and I'm glad that you brought it up.
Okay, thank you. And if possible, OC, you could do it on several of your shows, Mondays, and next week Wednesday is a holiday. But I appreciate you doing that because it is sad that they don't know these things and they're over anxious now.
And caller, I am told that Radio Cayman is doing public service announcements in relation to that specific area that you're talking about as well. That's topic.
I always tell them about that, but you see, some of them don't even have radios. So.
Well, caller, if I can say this, I've had that concern expressed to me as well, and it's something that I'm going to try to address tomorrow on another show, because I have a meeting later on today with the head of that of the needs assessment unit. I think what you're talking about is the reassessment for persons who are getting poor relief or the indigent relief. And they want to make sure that those persons who are receiving it are still rightfully receiving it, and their circumstances haven't changed, and there's certain deadlines for certain people. Yes. And there is a number of people who are confused. So what I am intending to do is meet with the head today to see if we can get more clarity to it, and I will make the announcements again on the next show repetitively, and potentially if she's available to even come on with me just to give a little bit more clarity, because it's important that those seniors don't feel uncomfortable knowing that their stipends that they depend their lives on is going to be taken away in any capacity. Another matter that came to light was that there are some elderly don't have the either vehicles to get down there or just the strength to go through that process again, because it's very tedious. You have to get a lot of paperwork. You get a lot of signing offs of any income that you have, what you have in your bank account, the proof that you're Caymanian, and that whole process is quite overburdening, and for elderlies it's quite difficult. So I want to also find out, is there assistance through the department that they make special provisions for seniors, that rather than them having to go through that whole process again, can somebody go out to them and help them with it? I want to find that out, because that way, at least if I get a number, I can give it out to them publicly and say, listen, if you think that you need assistance because of your age or any disability or lack of resources, that you can call this number for assistance. Or if I have to do it myself, then I will do it myself, because I understand that the seniors are having difficulty doing that. So I'm hoping that I'll have better news for those persons who are affected by that by tomorrow.
Yes. Thank you very much, because these things need to be checked in. I know West Bay. I know I don't have I wouldn't have the time, but oh God, West Bay need to really, really get things straightened up down here. Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Brian, and thank you, OC.
Thank you very much, caller, for bringing.
You have some news for them.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, caller, for bringing that up as well. We're going to take a commercial break now, folks. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We have someone from the director.
It is the director. I just called during the break for the director of the Needs Assessment Unit, Ms. Tamara Holston, and she's ever so kind and willing to explain some more. So I think we have her on the phone.
We certainly appreciate that. Let's go to the phone lines. Ms. Holston, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, OC and Kenneth. Thank you for having me on and clarifying what's about the reassessment process for the poor relief.
Thanks for making yourself available.
You're welcome. I just wanted to clarify if it's the dates they're uncertain of. Is anyone who was assessed prior, meaning before the 1st of July 2015? Those are the persons that need to present to be reassessed. Eventually, everyone will need to be reassessed, but some persons are actually in frequent contact with us, so we don't need them to come in to get an additional assessment. It's more in particular for those persons who we don't have anything, we don't have much information on our system, and we haven't had a recent assessment. As you know, for all of our services, you are to be reassessed periodically, but we have had, the government, I should say, because this has been in several places over the years, have had a challenge with reassessing persons. And this is now the first effort we've had in trying to identify those individuals. Here, the reassessment is also important because there may be persons who are deceased and may be on the list, and we're unaware. There may be persons who no longer live in the Cayman Islands. As you know, the financial assistance provided by government is for persons residing in the Cayman Islands. so they may no longer be here, and they may no longer qualify. Persons may have inherited funds or, came into something and no longer qualify. And what we're trying to identify is to make sure that those who are most in need are the ones who have access to those funds.
Yes,
so it's anyone who has been assessed prior to July 1st, 2015, meaning before, you need to present with all of the relevant information. Now, I want to clarify that the 30th of March is the date in which you have to provide the information in order to continue receiving the stipend. We're not we're not disconnecting anyone from the allowance immediately. What we're going to do is it's going to take us some time to reassess everyone. So we will book the persons for a date in the future to be assessed, because as you can imagine, we're doing other assessments too for regular services. But we won't disconnect you until we find out whether or not you still qualify. And even at that time, we're going to go through and do a proper assessment to see where the need really is. The 30th of the make sure I have my dates right here. The second date is the 1st of June, 2018. And at that time, if you don't present with any information, you will be permanently disconnected, because it would be the assumption then that maybe it's someone who's deceased who can't present, or it might be someone who no longer qualifies, or what the scenario may be. So the 30th of March is essential, because if the 30th you bring in your documents, we will not disconnect you. After the 30th, if we have not heard from you, we will put your payments on hold, which means we've not terminated, we just put them on hold, in hopes that obviously when the person sees that their funds are no longer coming, they would come into the unit to find out what's going on, and then we can let them know, you need to provide such and such information, at which time we would then reconnect them. But if by the 1st of June no one presents, and which means no one actually even notice that they've lost the funds, it might need either A, you're no longer in need of those funds, or B, you may be deceased or no longer on island.
Okay, question for you, Ms. Hurston. We know that the government's pension office, every January or before January, you have to submit a form. It has to be signed, witnessed either by a notary public or a justice of the peace, or someone within that office, if you present yourself, can witness it on your behalf, attesting that the fact that all of your details remain the same and that you are still that individual who's receiving the pension funds. Do you envisage establishing something similar to that in the future, or is there something in place like that now?
Well, that's what we plan to do once we've identified everyone, is periodically, it might not be annually, but even every 2 to 3 years, we'll have them just present and re-sign or release of information form, because unlike with pension, we also have certain other details we need to clarify, because there are requirements that you have to meet in order to qualify for the assistance, which may change from year to year. So we will be putting something in place where you may have to sign a continuation form, but it doesn't exempt you from possibly still having to do that financial assessment, because ours is still based on a need, and something might have changed. It might be that you're even in more need now because you've lost an income, or it might be that no, actually you've gained an income and therefore you're no longer in need, or maybe your household configuration has changed and you're now able to sustain yourself. But we will definitely be putting measures in place once we've completed this exercise, to ensure that in the future this won't occur again.
Tamara, thanks again for taking the call. I have just 2 questions. Obviously, there's some persons don't understand the importance of why we're doing this, right? And why the government is doing this. Would it be fair to say that it's more of accountability factors to make sure that, persons are not taking advantage of the system, not to inconvenience those who are truly just for it? Would that be a fair assessment?
It is a fair assessment, and the reality is, with all of our services, we want to make sure that you are truly in need of that service. As you can imagine, we don't have enough funds to give to everyone, so we want to make sure that the funds that we do use is for those who are in need, truly in need. So that is the main reason of the unit doing the reassessment, because we have elderly, especially the elderly and the disabled out there, and their funds are usually limited to none. We want to ensure that if you are on there and you no longer need that assistance, that someone else can benefit from it. So we're just trying to make sure that we're able to provide the funds to those who are most in need.
Okay, the last question now. I'm having difficulty with some of the seniors who are at a certain age now and probably not be able to be as mobile as they once were before. And sometimes, getting a lot of this paperwork can be a little bit tedious for them and don't know where to go and get all these things done. Is there any provisions available for them, for persons of that age, that can get assistance from your department, like a number or a particular officer can go and assist them?
Well, what persons frequently call in regards to maybe some elderly person within, the community, and we do provide home assessments and home visits. And the other avenue they can use is we have the community development officers, which are there. There should be one in each district, and we'll be providing more of that information at a later date. But there's community development officers are also persons that you could reach out to. Or I'm also encouraging, if you have a grandchild, a child, or a neighbor, anyone that might be willing to assist you if you're immobile, that you have them just make contact with the unit and provide what they can, especially a contact information or an address, and we then can go out and facilitate gathering those documents with the individual. So we're also asking the community to be as involved as possible. If you know of someone who might be receiving these services and they may be immobile, that would be the best thing to do, is for someone to come forward on their behalf and just let us know that they exist, their address, and we will be sure to have someone go out there and make contact with them.
Okay, thank you so much. So the three things: either call the department, or community development officer, or a family member to assist in the process.
Yes, or anyone. It could be anyone in a community. I've had different persons within the community reach out to the department in regards to other persons. We don't share information, as you know, for confidentiality reasons, but if you identify a need in the community that you think someone's in need, we will be sure to contact the individual to get the details directly from that individual. Okay. And in the case of PFA, then we would go to the person to get the poor relief. We'll go to the person to get the information from that individual.
Thank you, Tamara.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hurlston, for that.
Problem.
We certainly appreciate you making yourself available again. And Mr. Bryan, again, an excellent opportunity for either an established committee or an ad hoc committee in your constituency. Get them together. Those people who may know people who find themselves in a position that you're concerned about, identify them and reach out to them.
Well, it's funny enough that you say that, because as she was saying that, what I would like to do is actually go to Ms. Tamara. I didn't want to put her on the spot while we're on the radio, but to find out if there's anybody in Georgetown Central who hasn't been assessed yet.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether or not the confidentiality thing will allow them to give you the name of the person, though.
Well, yeah, it could be. You're right. Yeah,
that may be.
Well, I'll say this then, since we're here. Anybody in Georgetown Central who is having this difficulty, please feel free to contact my office right away. I'll make sure that my team and I try to assist in any capacity that we can within the rights of your information and the department allows. 936-4040, 936-4040. So if you're having any issues with that reassessment process, we'd be happy to help in Georgetown Central.
Okay, one more call. Let's go to the phone lines. We can accommodate that call before a headline news at 9 o'clock. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Kenneth, right, this goes for you. What I noticed with this community service, you got in, I know, morning, Ms. Osei, sorry.
Good morning, that's okay.
Good morning, sir.
And what I noticed in social service thing, and I know you see it and I see it, is a lot of these people is getting social service and they're still not getting the food. Because I live in West Bay and I can sit down and name many people that are not getting the food. I have suggested to, can I call a politician over the radio?
Public officials.
Yeah, the public. It's up to you, your decision.
I have suggested to Miss Johnny and Mickey and Dalby and all of them. I say, why the government don't set up a restaurant in each district? All social service getting food can go to this restaurant and get food. At least even 2 meals a day, they're getting 2 meals. Like I say, I know plenty of people in West Bay, they are still running up down begging food.
When you say that they're receiving services but not getting the food, what do you mean by that? Can you elaborate a little bit? Because are you saying that they're getting the credit for it but they're not buying the food? Or I don't understand.
Or someone diverting the money?
People that I can't come up and say that the people not buying them the food, but they are still on the street begging food.
Or maybe they are not getting that.
if you don't see that in Georgetown, something wrong with your eyes. And Miss OC, if you don't see it, there's something wrong with an eye.
Well, we see them, but we don't necessarily know whether or not they're receiving public assistance.
I know in West Bay, every last one of them is getting a public assistance, but they're not getting the food.
Well,
that I know with my two eyes.
Well, that is something. Sorry, go ahead.
I have a friend, a young boy. The minute he gets money, the next day he's out on the street begging food. And I can tell you another thing, that what people that gets money, like get these things and go to Foster's or these shops, that we call vouchers.
Vouchers, yeah.
What a lot them is doing to it, and I'm afraid that I'm not calling no names. They is going to the shop to get certain things, and they come back and sell it. Have you experience on that?
Yeah, but the point that you made are very valid, and we've heard of all of them. I've definitely heard of the same situation in my constituency too. But this is even more reason why Ms. Tamara and her team and the government is trying to make sure that there's a proper reassessment process, because sometimes throughout that reassessment process, they can identify little scenarios like this and wondering why. So not only are they being reassessed, but they're being re-examined. Is there something going on that we should be concerned about? Is there drug-related issues? Are the persons who are taking care of the elderly, who are responsible to take care of the goods, are they actually getting it to the elderly? All of those factors. So this process will actually help with that, so I appreciate it.
Point well taken, caller. Thank you very much. Sorry, we have to go to a headline news break now. Folks, please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, Mr. Kenneth Bryan, the MLA who represents the constituency of Georgetown Central in our Legislative Assembly. One of our listeners has sent us a WhatsApp message, and it says, good morning, OC and Mr. Bryan. I have a question for Mr. Bryan concerning the Palmdale. Why are they not trying to fix that sharp corner on the inside left turn right after you enter? In my opinion, it is a danger to the many students entering there after school, after the school bus drops them off at the edge of the road. There are no sidewalks on this corner, only lots of high trees, and a person that lives in that area can confirm this. The school bus will not drive in there, rain or sunshine. Children have to walk in from the main road. I have reported this to the education department many times. To date, nothing. One of the questions, as we discussed off air, Mr. Bryan, would be whether the road in Palmdale is now a public road, which means being maintained by government, as opposed to still being a private road that was built by the developer and continues to be maintained by the developer. I would, in my layman's opinion, if it is a government road, then the government would have the ability or the legal right to go in and acquire property in there, either by forced acquisition or voluntarily from the landowner to straighten that road out. So the question would be whether the road in Palmdale is a private road still, or whether or not it's a publicly gazetted road.
Well, OC, those are very good questions, and questions I need to find the answers to. The person who sent you the message have highlighted the concern about the kids around that corner, and honestly, it didn't come to my attention until just now. But that corner is a very sharp corner.
Yes, when you're driving through there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about it now. If I had to walk around it, is a very awkward one, and not thinking that I didn't know that the bus didn't go all the way in. I thought the bus did. But if a kid had to walk through that is a very dangerous situation. But even more reason now for that person who sent you the message to come to the meeting on the 21st of February. Because that way we can discuss some of those issues. I'm assuming that person that sent you a message, have either interest in Palmdale or well aware of Palmdale or currently still lives in Palmdale. I want to also try to get contact with the landowner at the front of the Palmdale entrance, who is a good friend of mine, and I respect her highly, to discuss what options are available for government to consider, and if there's negotiation abilities to potentially see if there's ways to straighten out that road. One of the things I must say, though, that I'd be really surprised if there weren't negotiations already, because with the extension of the new road there on Crew Road, one would assume that government would have considered, is this the appropriate time now to try to straighten out the entrance to Palmdale Road? Because if there were opportunities to straighten it out now, that means they would have to go back and take back out the sidewalk where they've currently already built on the new road. So I'm worried that either one, negotiations have happened already and no conclusion came to the point, or government just simply failed in even considering it in the first place. And I think it's the latter, because knowing the landowner at the front, I know that it's a person who cares about the community and is definitely willing to assist as long as they're compensated for the value of exchange. So I'm hoping that I can have that information available, so when we have the community meeting in Palmdale on the 21st of February, Wednesday at 7 p.m., that I can have some answers, because I'm certain that road entrance is going to be one of the topics, because there's a number of people who have already expressed their concerns to me. So I would say to that caller, that commenter that sent you the message, to go ahead and make sure you make yourself available at that meeting on the 21st of February.
Okay.
Unless we have another call, I'll go on to the next point.
Oh, we have two callers, I'm told,
okay.
Actually. Sorry about that. First caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yes, good morning. This is Cresswell Powery.
Good morning, Mr. Powery.
And good morning to you, Mr. Connor and Mr.
Brian. Yes, sir.
I would like to give my support to the gentleman who called just a few minutes ago concerning, the needs of the individuals. But I would also like for government to, reassess some of these, some of the people who are receiving assistance, because I firmly believe that, when a person is in need, we should do all we can to assist them to get back on their feet. But after a couple of months, and the people, they should be back on their feet and, able to, and if they're able to work, they should, assist them in finding a job, and they should, provide for themselves, because what we're doing now, we're creating a welfare state, especially in West Bay. And I know almost every day you go out, there's a new person coming to beg you. And, if you go to Foster's, they're there. If you go to, Subway, West Bay, they're there. Wherever you park your vehicle, somebody shows up. And a lot of these people can really assist themselves. And the other point, I would like to make a public service announcement. Can I do that?
Sure, go right ahead, sir.
Okay. In the constituency of West Bay Central, we're trying to set up a district council, and we're having a meeting tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. at the Church of Christ on Badamanu Road, and we're inviting the individuals from West Bay Central, those who are interested in improving, trying to do what we can to improve our district, please show up. And the idea behind it is really to set up a district council. And we're launching our first project for the district on the 17th, Saturday, the 17th of February. Starting at 6 a.m., we want to start cleaning up some of the main roads. And we're going to assemble at the 8 Bush complex, and then we'll disperse from that area to the various areas that we have allocated for the first cleanup. So we're inviting the people, especially the people in West Bay Central, who care about improving the conditions in our constituency to please show up at the meeting tomorrow evening at 7:30 at the Church of Christ on Bottom Road.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much, caller, for that. So that's the Church of Christ on Bottom New Road.
Yeah.
Okay. Tomorrow, was it?
Yes. Caller, you're still there, right?
Okay. Thank you very much, caller,
so
for
we got
that.
that right.
Let's grab the other caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Just fine, Mr. Connor. Good morning to you, and good morning to MLA Brian.
Good morning, Mr. Adam.
I first want to say that I'm glad you're tackling some of the subjects that you're tackling. And on what the previous caller has said, Mr. Brian, I've discussed with you about this creation of the welfare state system and how, in fact, it does not have to be if our pension system was being properly managed, and it is not being properly managed. There's very poor regulation in the pension administration from government, as well as many of the private sector pension plans themselves. I won't get into the details of all of them. If anybody's interested, they can go on the website, Cayman Pension Watch, and they will see some of the things that's going on when you go to the pension plans themselves. But it is sad that here we started down the road of allowing people a system of accumulating their pension funds in their pension account at a pension plan that they chose as a body corporate of employees. They pay the government over $1 million a year to regulate. They pay the pension companies to operate the pension plan for them. They pay all of the fees, all of the salaries, all of the expenses. And yet still, information, vital operational information, vital information when they go to change the governing documents for the plan is withheld from the members. And in our law, Section 2 says, this law is for the maintenance and establishment of pension plans for the benefit of employees in the island. It is the employees are the only entities to which that law is obligated. Everybody else is a service provider. And I intend to come back to see you again, sir, on this subject, because it is so humiliating when people have to go through the NAU process and give all their own personal little information and financial information. I have worked with some of the people who have had to go through that. And we want to end up with an island, at least for those persons who work during their life, that they can reach old age in dignity without being told, oh, you're part of the welfare state system. The workers will look at them and say, you're a burden on me. Time you go because you're getting money. And continue with what you're doing. Continue with the awareness. And continue to ask questions about the regulation of pensions. Our people don't even have an idea. They're putting the money in. Well, how much am I going to get out? I'm 30 years old. I'm 40 years old. Where am I on the path for having a decent pension, which is only income replacement? That's all it should be. That's what pension is. Mortgage funding and all that other stuff is for other issues, educational, medical expenses, unemployment insurance. All those are different funds if you want to implement. But your income replacement is so important for people to reach their old age in dignity. And I encourage you, continue, and continue to work and ask questions, and let's get it back on track. We started, and we've lost our way with poor governance and poor regulation.
Thank you very much, caller, for that. Certainly appreciate it. And just my comment that with what has happened in the stock market on Friday last and this Monday, I wouldn't really, and there are pension funds in the Cayman Islands that are allowed to invest outside of the Cayman Islands. I hate to see the bottom line of some of those pension funds after Friday and Monday, even though there was some rebounding after that. Of course, we have our stock expert here, beside us, but he has to operate the camera. He can't talk about stocks on the show. We're going to take a commercial break now. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We have no callers. We're in the last 15 minutes, so we'll close the calls off now, but we certainly will take, WhatsApp messages, text messages, and as well as emails. But we're going to give Mr. Brian an opportunity to at least wrap up and to touch base on all of the subjects that he wanted to talk about.
Yes, and there was 3 left, so let me just quickly try to go through them. As I suggested or said before in the start of the show today, I'll be having a meeting with the Kodak and Georgetown Central Constituent Committee. Georgetown Central and Scranton Community Committee and Kodak. We'll be having a meeting this Saturday at my office at 7 p.m. and I want to encourage all the members of those groups. Please, if you can make it, it's important because we need to get the ball rolling on some of these projects we want to do in Georgetown and as well as particularly Georgetown Central. At least that's a priority for me. But all of Georgetown altogether, I want to see if we can get some of these things moving. There's some things I want to do, but I want to have their involvement. So please try to make your way to that meeting at my office Saturday, 7 p.m. I want to go on to the pension issue that I was talking about before in respect to a foreclosure. Now, the last caller, obviously, him and I have a little different view in respect to using pensions for certain things. We know that the administration of the United Democratic Party had made legislative change to allow Caymanians to pay off their mortgages if it's up to $35,000. That is good. I think the intent of it was good to protect Caymanians and probably pay off the last little bit so they don't have to have that expense anymore. But it creates a peculiar position, and some people think the interpretation of the law to pay off your pension shouldn't be limited to $35,000. But I have a situation where there's a Caymanian who have found themselves in difficulty with their mortgage. The mortgage provider is in the process of foreclosure and is trying their very, very best to help this individual, but obviously limited to what the policies of the company is and have to do the due diligence. Once it gets to a certain stage, then they go through that process of foreclosure. So I was trying to find out whether we can get the pension for this individual. And just for means of background information, this person owes $42,000 left on their mortgage.
So it would be slightly above.
Just slightly above. So $42,000 have access to $35,000 in pension. So if they had that pension available to them, they would just owe a mere $7,000 left. Unfortunately, the way that
you say mere, but that may be a lot for them.
well, yeah, that is true. A lot for the individual, but I think that the person still has a significant amount of time left in their working life, and they're employed now too. So the law doesn't. But unfortunately, the concern that I have is that the law does not allow the pension providers to release any monies unless the money's amount that they're releasing pays off the whole balance. So in this circumstance, because the person is behind on some of the mortgage payments, they get themselves up to current simply on the basis that they won't release any of the monies because it's not paying off the whole amount. So technically speaking, to sum it up, this person could lose their home because of an $8,000 difference. And I think that's sad because I don't think the spirit and the intention of the law was to do that. It was to help. And I think that we need to have some changes to that pension law, that in these types of circumstances, either a person can be allowed to be remortgaged for the difference of the amount, or government will assist, because this person can't get the $35,000, and it's just a difference of $8,000 to pay off the difference. And I'm worried, because when they get the foreclosure on their home, then they're going to end up depending on the state. So what's the point? So we're going to pay $800 a month to house that individual, because they no longer have somewhere to live. And if you think about $8,000 difference, that's 10 months worth of rent that you do, and you do that in 1 year. And this person has a lifespan only at the age 55, can go on until 80. What are we going to do? How much money are we going to spend on trying to assist this individual rather than changing the law to allow them to assist themselves? I think it's really silly. I think it's time to change that concept. And I dare say that if we had a referendum on this factor right now, that more people would be in favor for allowing them to use their pension, regardless if it's a total amount, but rather than a mere $35,000, that they'll be able to assist themselves to pay off their mortgages, because the mortgage is probably the number one expense for anybody in any family. And I honestly, it bothers me so much to know that this person has money available, but just don't have as much, but has access to it, and the law allows. So to lose her home for $8,000 is technically what I see it as, though some people may see it different. It's actually losing your home for $42,000. But if the law allows you to use the $35,000, I am concerned, because I get very emotive, and I know a lot of people know that already.
So have the officials been able to say, well, this is a peculiar situation. Let's see how we can work with this, how to the benefit of all concerned, and to stay within the confines of the law at the same time.
Well, I had a meeting just yesterday, myself, the constituent, and the constituent is not even in my constituency, but I don't believe in.
Yeah, that shouldn't matter.
Shouldn't matter. The person lives in Prospect, But unfortunately, I had a meeting with the pensions office yesterday, and they said there's no wiggle room in the interpretation of the law, and they will not have access to the money, period. So I am now at the stage where I call back to the mortgage provider to say, okay, we are stuck. Is there any consideration? And one of the solutions that I thought was that if there was maybe a good Samaritan who is willing to lend the money of the difference to get her to the place where the outstanding amount now falls $1 below the $35,000.
So that means just pay the lending institution the $7,000 plus that needs to be
exactly
done. Yes.
Just to bring it below the $35,000 for the pension.
Yeah.
Then the pension office is obligated by law, or the pension provider is obligated by law, to release the rest of the money to pay off the mortgage. So now you have a house full, free and clear.
Yes.
And what I was trying
if anything, that person
to
then
remortgage it for
or that person can put a lien
on the property
for the for their $7,000 so that if it is sold, there's $7,000 is protected.
Exactly. So
what about the persons and not wanting to get into any individual's name or anything, but what about the person's ability after the mortgage has been paid off to repay that $7,000?
The person is working. The person is working right now, has job letters, has direct debit coming out of their account and everything.
There must be some.
But trust me, OC. I've tried everything. I've talked to the mortgage provider. I've talked to the pension office. I've talked to the pension administrator, which is Brit K. And there's the only way out of this from this person.
You need to find someone who's prepared, who has the financial wherewithal to put that $7,000.
Exactly,
there's got to be a good Samaritan out there who would.
Well, I hope that there is a good Samaritan listening or watching to say, let's assist this person rather than losing their home. Because the truth is, if I don't find some way to find that $7,000, she's going to end up losing her whole home and then become a cost to the state afterwards. And then it makes no logical sense. And I even said to the mortgage provider, I said, listen, if I get a good Samaritan who may say, okay, I can get the money to you after the house is free and clear, can the mortgage provider give the indication that they would remortgage the house just for that $7,000 so I can get my money back right away, rather than me tied up into a personal thing with this person for a long time? They said no, they won't do that because unfortunately they have a history of now having an issue before.
And I wouldn't really want to deal with that.
Exactly. That's where the hiccup comes in for persons who...
Our cameraman has to leave exactly at 9:30 to go to something else. So we want to try to wrap up on time this morning. We have about 2 minutes left. So
all right. I just want to say thank you so much, OC, for having me on the show. It is a bit different without Mr. Markfield and Ms. Pitcairn. I miss you. Though you put some licks in me sometimes, I appreciate it because it makes me stronger. Mr. Markfield, come on back. I really hope you come back. And Ms. Pitcairn. OC, thank you for allowing me to come on and share the information about the concerns that I have and the things that I'm doing with the people of the Cayman Islands and that particularly of Georgetown Central. Ms. Susan, thank you so much for your listening audience and your viewing audience. God bless you. I love you. Have an amazing day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown, for being here. And I am hoping that... time will allow it on some occasion for me to talk more about the entry permit, to talk about deportation, talk about the various sections of the immigration law that deals with those issues as well. Part 8 of the immigration law, sections 87 and 88 dealing with deportation and some other sections as well, just, to talk about those things. Extremely important for you, our listening and our viewing audience, to understand exactly what the law says and how it is addressed as well. Folks, I want to thank you for allowing Radio Cayman and by extension For the Record into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. I also want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters keepers. There is always someone out there who's less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. If you can't do that, then I suggest you donate to a worthy charity, because we always want to consider those who need, not necessarily those who want or even those who crave. I say to you, have a great day. Continue to support your radio station, Radio Cayman. Join Sterling Dwayne Banks at 12 noon for Talk Today. On Friday, it is expected to have MLA Mr. Arden McLean, who represents the District of East 10 in our Legislative Assembly. He will be on for the opposition. And I say to you, have a great day. And as usual, we ask the good Lord to bless these 3 beautiful, wonderful Cayman Islands.
Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record.